Can you believe it? As early as the 13th century before the Renaissance, there were already people advocating the spirit of experimental science. We all know, in the history of Christianity, once cast a shadow of persecution over science. But in this darkness, there was a philosophical giant, who lit the torch for experimental science. He is known as the miraculous Dr. Roger Bacon, a scholastic philosopher. Roger Bacon, although older than the famous Thomas Aquinas, by more than 10 years, they had completely different destinies. After the return of Aristotelian philosophy to Western society, Thomas Aquinas, by transforming Aristotelianism, became the cornerstone of Christian theology, and the master of scholastic philosophy. He also constructed for the church at that time the most comprehensive and systematic theological theory. He began to gradually replace Augustine, becoming the most authoritative official philosopher recognized by the church. The most authoritative official philosopher, while Roger Bacon was imprisoned and banned for advocating scientific experiments. Imprisoned and banned for as long as 10 years. Faced with Thomas Aquinas, this church officially appointed authority. Roger Bacon once mercilessly expressed Thomas, a person who couldn't even read Greek, relying solely on Latin translations of secondary sources to understand Aristotle, shamelessly wrote a series of commentaries on Aristotle's works. He believed Thomas held scholastic philosophers fundamentally misunderstood Aristotle's ideas. Their assertions are completely distortions and misuses of Aristotle's philosophy. Roger Bacon believed these so-called scholastic philosophers, the use of logical reasoning is one-sided, because fundamentally, they overlook premises that are more important than reasoning. Francis Bacon once said that without experience, nothing can be fully understood. There are only two ways for humans to approach truth and gain knowledge. One is through reasoning, the other is through experience. Francis Bacon opposed focusing solely on logical reasoning and neglecting the practice of experimental facts. He believed that logical reasoning only leads to a conclusion, which makes us acknowledge the legitimacy of that conclusion. However, reasoning itself cannot provide objective evidence for the conclusion. Without objective evidence, there is no evidence, and thus people cannot dispel their inner doubts, unless we use the method of experience to discover the true truth. Otherwise, the conclusion drawn from logical reasoning alone is insufficient. It must be supported by experiential evidence in order to be fully established. Francis Bacon exposed at that time many empirical philosophers believe in foolish ideas. Man is the perfection and end of all creatures in the world. For example, some claim that diamond can be cut with goat's blood, TBO from the opposite motion, or hot water in a cup freezes faster than cold water. Roger Bacon believed the above errors, all because these empirical philosophers only focus on the structure of logical arguments, completely ignore the truth of the premises. So Roger Bacon has always advocated using scientific experimental methods, completely transform the current empirical philosophy system. We modern people have this ideological concept. One of Ma may be readily accepted, but for the social background at that time, this is a very dangerous idea, and the tendency of this claim can be traced back to his work completed in 1267. In the Mirror of Hope, perhaps everyone to the number 1267, no intuitive feeling. It should be noted that in 1267, China was under the rule of the Yuan dynasty. Its official full name is the Great Yuan Dynasty, bringing light to the country of China. While at this time, the 1,000-year-old prestigious Oxford University in England, it had only been established for just over 100 years. Of course, the year 1267 is just a timeline based on textual evidence. It is a verifiable and rigorous statement. In fact, according to historical records, it was earlier. Around the year 1240, he himself once taught at the University of Oxford. He has expressed this view to his students. During this time, he also began conducting numerous scientific experiments, such as experiments with concave and convex lenses, experiments with gunpowder and rainbows, and so on. Here is a brief introduction for everyone. The Franciscan Order is a group of monks affiliated with the church organization. They advocate helping the poor, and to engage in a life of practice through charitable and virtuous deeds. They also require monks to restrain themselves, not to live a life of luxury and pleasure-seeking. At that time, Roger Bacon joined the order. It is also because they recognize the ideals of the Franciscan Order. He originally wanted to support his scientific research through the resources of the society, but limited by the historical context at that time. The president of the society at that time, Bonaventura, didn't know anything about scientific experiments at all, so he always believed that Roger Bacon was practicing evil sorcery and magic. Therefore, Roger Bacon was subjected to a 10-year-long imprisonment, and was forbidden to have any contact with the outside world. To spread his heretical ideas, he was not even allowed to freely publish his works. During this period, his major works, minor works, the third work, as well as the hopeful mirror we mentioned earlier, were all completed within the prison. It wasn't until 1268 that his imprisonment was lifted. Roger Bacon, who gained his freedom, did not give up, but instead became even more radical in criticizing the ignorant masses and missionaries. This outcome was foreseeable. About 10 years later, Roger Bacon was imprisoned again for his unconventional ideas. Promoting heretical ideas landed him in jail once more. At that time, Roger Bacon faced indifferent crowds, faced with various slanders and attacks. He summarized 4 obstacles that prevent people from obtaining the truth. Next time, let's explore together the 4 obstacles mentioned by Roger Bacon. Follow me for a popular look at philosophy. Friends, see you next time.